Sure. Thank you. I'm Vadim. I'm the head of AI within SaaS Group. On a daily basis, I lead a team that incorporates all of these AI-powered features into our product suite. SaaS Group is this company that essentially acquires SaaS companies and builds them towards a greater value. And as part of this year's initiative, we've created this AI team that strives to just deliver more user-centric AI-powered features to its tens of thousands of users across the product suite.
Awesome. Excited to learn more about that. Barbara?
Hi everyone, I'm Barbara. I have about 21 years experience in customer experience and marketing. I have a consultancy myself, so I do everything from strategy into implementation for startups, teeny tiny bootstraps, right through to big, massive global enterprises. So it's very much working with them to become, rather than focus on CX, to help organizations of all shapes and sizes to basically understand what it means to be customer centric, and then also understand how to shape and transform their businesses with customer insights, customer needs to really drive growth.
Awesome. Not least.
Hey everyone, my name is Nasi. I'm the head of product at The Alliance. The Alliance is a parent company to 15 different technology-enabled learning and development platforms. So we create experiences across courses and thought leadership articles, in-person conferences, templates, frameworks in industries like product marketing, product management, finance, artificial intelligence. And so we create these subscription-based learning products that help people in the professional world keep at the top of their space. My role is to be responsible for all the technology we build, as well as figuring out how we take all of this educational media and transform it into an interesting and usable customer experience.
Great. So you have, of course, a lot of experience as well. I'm sure the audience already knows what they're in for. So let's move on and take a look at our first insights here. So what I'm going to do is share with you guys what we're finding in the report. And after the webinar, early next week, we will be able to send out the full analysis, but we pulled out some of the key findings so that we could have a discussion. So as you can see on the screen, while 74% of product managers express confidence in AI's potential, many teams still rely on manual methods, with 25% not using it at all. So the confidence versus the low adoption, it's like, of course, when we have our products, we are expecting the users to love them, but then they're not sometimes, and there's a problem to fix. So here, I want to kick it off with Nasi and ask a question on what is the biggest opportunity right now around AI? I think we before discussed complex data analysis, but it's to dig a little bit into where we are right now and what could we expect in this area? And yeah, just give us your feedback on this.
Yeah, so I guess from two perspectives. One is how we would use it as product managers day to day, and then the other is how we're looking to implement it into our products to help our customers have a better experience. I think today we obviously have a lot of large language models on the market, which are available everywhere and everyone is really excited about. We call this AI, and I think it is the key opportunity there, or the dream scenario is, we log into our computers in the morning and the AI tells us everything that's happened overnight. It's looked through our analytics and it's flagging any issues that we have. It's telling us where the key opportunities are. It's suggesting people that we need to speak to solve problems or to work on new opportunities. It's going right across the customer experience from acquisition all the way down to retention. And it's having a look at each one of these areas and telling us how we could optimize, etc. That's not what I have available to me today. I wish I did. What I have is maybe one key tool that I've found a way to trust, and I'm figuring out new ways each day of using it as an assistant to make my life a bit easier. So it feels like an extra team member, maybe 2 or 3 team members, a few analysts, and it's doing the grunt work that I either don't have someone to do or I really want to do very quickly. It's not filling me with ultimate trust. I don't always feel like what it spits out is the thing I need to move forward with. But fortunately, I'm at a point in my career where I can look at what it shows me and decide whether this is good or bad and figure out, how to step forward. And then the other thing I'm seeing is all of the tools that I do use, the third-party tools, now have some form of an AI implementation. And I'm trying to figure out if I want to use that in-app AI system, or if I want to perhaps take some of the output of this tool, whether it's analytics or customer insights, etc., and do my usual thing, which is manual, or use my most trusted AI tool to help me move things forward a bit. And so I think the space is somewhat scattered, and because we don't get to dive all the way deep and really build up that trust and understand which use cases we feel it can really support us with or not, we kind of just dabble a little bit and then end up with a few useful habits that we keep sticking with and saying, okay, I like this tool for that application, that tool for that other application. And I'm kind of going to stay there until someone else promises me something that will 2, 3, 4x the efficiency of what I'm doing right now.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Vadim, I know you also put some notes on things you wanted to share here, or did you want us to continue?
I just wanted to follow up on what Nasi very well put, that sometimes to review data, it's much easier than to generate data. And being in a place where you have this sidekick or co-pilot that could essentially generate an insight for you, or some content that you just simply have to review, it's much easier than starting from ground zero. And what I found in slightly different background and an engineering background is that it feels to me right now that I'm at least twice as productive in building software in general when using such tools. And it's exactly what the word says. It's a tool. You have to learn how to use it, and you have to find a place for it in your workflow and in your product in such a way that it enhances it, or empowers you to just move quicker and take decisions quicker and so on. And I've done this interesting experiment. So I tried coding on a plane without an internet connection, just so that I can not use any of the AI tools. And it felt to me like something was definitely missing. It felt to me that I was so slow and it was unbearable, because it got to a point where I do a lot of the review work and a lot of I know it when I see it, that it's right. And to me, that's an amazing unlock. And that's what we also see in the products that we build for the customers that we serve, that they like it when they can see the result and then review it from themselves, rather than consuming maybe some dashboard or some complex chart and then coming up with the insight themselves. Yes, you can do it, but it requires a certain level of skill to do so. While reviewing work, you can almost kind of intuitively say that it's the right thing or not for the business.
Can I jump in with the last statement? I'd say the stats don't in any way shock me, and to basically reconfirm what Nasi and Vadim have said, that we understand that there's so much potential. The adoption is quite low, especially I'd say because nobody quite knows how to get started, or what's, the certain platforms, certain tools promise us the world, and we think we literally just drop and dump, and then it is, AI is really artificial intelligence, where it's not. It's reviewing and trying to comprehend. I would say for adoption, the more senior people will be able to do it and use it incredibly easily for brilliant basics, getting rid of the tedious tasks that we always did, but knowing when we read something, whether we're reading a truth or reading a complete confusion of information. For the more junior people, my advice would be sit down and really think, if you're going to put something into generative AI, what's the main question and what do you want out of it? And think about the best way to ask the question and provide it with as much information as you can. you know, it's rubbish in, rubbish out, to put it politely. If you ask a very simple question, you will get a very simple answer. But if you're actually providing an exceptionally long, detailed piece of information and asking a very, very pointed question, you will get insight and you will get help. But it takes time to learn to give the language and understand what you really want and why you want it.
Right. That's a very good point. And I think it ties into those 36% that are satisfied with AI-driven analysis. If we probably dive deeper and look into those 36%, maybe some of them, some of those situations fall into the category which you described as rubbish in, right? We don't have enough data to extract meaningful analysis from. So naturally, we're dissatisfied with the result because it wouldn't magically generate something out of thin air.
Yeah. So it's exactly where we still learn AI is not eliminating the human expertise strategy component to it, because the trusting part of AI, it's that, okay, yes, but you still need to read it. You still need to know, is it giving you something more insightful that you're just like, this is great and now I can use it. And at the same time, the opposite end is that you should be able to detect that this is not quite correct, and this is contradicting to what I have asked. So no, this is not something I'm going to include as a truth point. So that is interesting, and maybe we will take a look into the 36% and understand, like, what is their level, do they rate as satisfied for AI-driven data analysis? So are they looking to just put some data in and get very clear strategy forward, or are they willing to take some time in and understand that it's a process and that we're probably, maybe in the future, there's a possibility for that, but that's not how it is right now. All right. So, all right, let's move on. Does anyone want to add anything else, or could we jump into the next point?
One quick thing that might be good to add, building on a point that Barbara made for people who are a bit earlier in their careers, to ask a very detailed question. I think that's great advice, because any question that you ask of these large language models will be answered. And it's very easy to look at the initial answer and say, wow, this is amazing, and then get anchored onto the ideas that it's given you there. And even if you think you're then reviewing and trying to make it yours, you probably don't veer too far away from the initial response. And so one of the things I suggest is to actually do a first draft yourself, right? So do the first attempt and say, this is my attempt. If you just ask, well, give me a product strategy for Q4, you'll get one. Maybe completely different to the company you're working in. But if you take 2 hours to try and do one, however bad it is, and then feed it into the model and ask it to improve or expand or critique, or just, test the edges of your thinking here, you will probably end up with a higher quality version of the thing that you were trying to create in the first place.
Awesome. Thanks for adding that. All right, so let's move on here. These are some interesting stats on how AI is seen as valuable for synthesizing user issues and interviews, collecting all this insights from our users that we need. Yet research is largely manual. This is how the survey respondents felt. So the results reveal that 74% of respondents are confident in the potential of AI tools to enhance user research. However, they reported that much of the process still remains manual. So then this could kind of go in back to what their expectations are versus reality, but let's get into that in a second. And then the other part to this is that although AI is designed to accelerate these tasks, many teams have not fully yet embraced AI-driven methods in their user research efforts. So some of the questions in my mind that I've been thinking and we've discussed, it's that, what are the processes or tools that teams should be using? So maybe they're not using it correctly, maybe they're just not, maybe ChatGPT is not the tool for it, and that's the most commonly used one. But then how could they overcome these barriers that they're facing, that, the process is still manual? Is it a market expectation versus demand? And is there a skill gap, which I think we mentioned a little bit above in the previous slide. So here, Vadim, I'm going to have you take it away. Those are some of just the questions, but feel free to dive into what you want to highlight.
Yeah, awesome. I think it could be a gap within the approach. So, for example, and I'm relating this back to one of our brands called Zenloop, which is a survey brand. And it collects like thousands of pieces of feedback and reviews from customers every day. And prior to us exploring any type of AI analysis on top of those feedback pieces or review pieces, it was on only like dashboards showing maybe sentiment analysis and maybe some topics that were manually created and then assigned based on some keywords to each of those pieces of feedback. And while that was good enough and companies could understand maybe that, okay, the sentiment is not that great around this topic here, but they couldn't maybe extract the insight from that and extract, okay, what do I have to do for that sentiment to improve? And yes, you could use maybe some off-the-shelf tool to analyze that. Maybe you use ChatGPT to drag in some of your feedback pieces that you have. You export them, you drag them into ChatGPT or some other user-facing tool, and you maybe get an analysis of, okay, maybe I don't know, 17 people are really not happy with their packaging process because it got all messed up. The way we approached it instead is not using necessarily customer-facing tools to analyze these processes, but rather build the feature that would dissect those reviews and feedbacks into smaller pieces of content and then analyze them. Okay, what do I have to improve in the business so that this piece of negative feedback turns into positive? So essentially, we've created this engine of turning negative feedback into positive feedback, and we've passed that insight to customers on the other end to tell them exactly what they have to do. And it turned into this analytics machine that provides so much more insight than just viewing a dashboard and trying to figure out for yourself how that works. And I just wanted to share a few slides on how we've done that, because I think it will provide great insight into how other products or other companies or other teams could breach such features. And just for a brief moment, I want to also go back to the first insight and circle back on the idea of how these systems work. So as Barbara said, okay, you and Nasi also mentioned, like, any question that you ask will get answered. So it's a matter of how do you emphasize on the problem. These models are simply next word generation machines. So they have no factual information, they have no knowledge, they have no understanding of how something works. It's just call it a statistical model for predicting what's the next word after my current word. The interesting thing is, in a way, that's how our brain works, right? You don't know exactly what your last word will be, but you know how to get there. You know what the next word is, and always do that. So it's a really clever mechanism. And with any input, you get an output, and that's how you usually try to solve a problem. You get some user feedback in, and you'll get some insight out. If you ask it to analyze it from a sentiment standpoint, you'll get a sentiment output. If you ask it to extract some insight, you'll get some insight out. And the brick wall that many teams and companies hit is that they think their problem is just too complex to solve that way. Like, okay, I have an input and an output, but how can I word that in so that I can extract some action for my business? How can I put this list of feedbacks in and actually get some decisions that I have to take? Because I know I have all of these data behind me, like sales data, maybe other feedback data that I've had in the past, maybe all of the sentiment data. So how do I solve it? And the thing is, and Nasi alluded to it, is having these precise and more deliberate tasks that you could solve is the way to go. So our advice, or maybe the direction that we're taking with all of these features that we're adding to our products, is that we find that individual problem that we're solving at each step of the way, and then compose this greater solution. So for example, for analyzing feedback, not just putting in a list of sentences and then getting one singular output, but rather classifying them into the right topics, understanding what's the sentiment behind that each of those topics, then extracting insights for each of those topics, then seeing if that insight repeats itself and it happens across multiple batches of comments in multiple days, and only then surfacing it as an analysis result, not immediately jumping in with the first output that you get. And the way we do this is something that you've heard a lot maybe lately, is this concept of agents. So it's not only input and output, but you also have access to tools and memory and planning and all sorts of these things. And this allows us, at least in Zenloop, for example, a SaaS group brand, is to perform all of these great tasks and provide all of these great features in an automatic way using AI. So for example, we can do classification, we can do segmentation, like spotting different behaviors of your users, so such as maybe malicious intent, maybe some really bad review, some particular speech, and we do all sorts of keyword mapping and grouping that can be done with AI as well. The results are, and this is where people are taken aback, like, okay, AI cannot provide in-depth enough analysis, but then if we look at how they do it manually, we will notice things such as, okay, they have categories for example, user feedbacks that are duplicated. You cannot really understand even the work that the people are doing. And when you put it side by side, you would see that if implemented correctly, AI can definitely provide just more stability and more form around exactly how you process that feedback. And this enables us to build things such as an insight extraction machine, where it could analyze tons and tons of feedback, and then it could give you a dashboard such as this one and break it down into, okay, what's the issue with my business right now according to my customers? What is the distribution of sentiment across my customer base? Something like this put into ChatGPT, yes, it will lead to that maybe feeling that AI is not doing enough. But once used correctly, since it's simply a tool that you have to find a way to apply it correctly in your business, and once you dissect the problem that you're trying to solve into smaller bits and pieces, you can get these very great results. And this has actually turned into a product feature that we've had within the group. And this can basically be implemented in any type of brand product that you're leading and managing, simply by defining the problem very well. And as that cliche saying goes, is like defining the problem is the 50% of the solution. And I believe with AI is exactly the same. It's simply a tool. It's just, think of it as just like a piece of software. And as long as you define the right problem for it to solve, I believe that just satisfaction will be much greater, and the confidence level of the respondents to using such AI tools will be also greater. So a bit of a perspective from a builder's point of view on this.
I love that, and I love that we could see that. So I guess this could hand off to Barbara or Nasi as well, but it's again going a little bit back to what we were saying at first, creating these, letting AI help you with your process and knowing how to use it. So like we're just talking about being able to organize the feedback, being able to help identify patterns, identify trends, then giving it a suggestion, and then using that to get more context and more strategy or next steps out of it. Similarly with like User-Snap, when we were looking to implement specific key features for AI, we looked at what are some of the manual tasks that our users are having. For example, like tagging data, tagging feedback, knowing what is spam, what is not urgent, what is urgent, so that you could address those things really quickly. The AI can help you do that by just understanding based on the words that's being submitted.
Exactly.
The predictiveness of like what you need to do next, that's of course the human strategy side of it. You know your customers the best. You would need to speak to them one-on-one. So I'm curious to know, Barbara or Nasi, do you have any thoughts on this, or are you agreeing or have something else to share?
What Vadim showed was incredibly impressive. I wish I was there. I'm definitely not. Well, from my perspective, what I use very often is, with all research, very often we get obsessed with the actual data and really focus in on the data. And AI, yeah, you can throw it in and spin it out and see. To me, go back to your hypothesis, go back to the job to be done, or your customer journey mapping on your use cases, point of view statements, all of that, and think about what were the why did you ask those questions? What did you really need or want out of those? What were you going to do with it? And then put the information, put the data through and ask those questions. Are the insights true? Are you actually finding or trying to find correlations that don't exist? And is there, from the feedback, is there unmet needs that we didn't hypothesize? And it's really, from a simple point of view, that's where I spend a lot of the time, really looking at turning the data back into answering back my hypothesis. When I do that, I become like a schizophrenic person. I literally become two versions of me, and I go really positive with my hypothesis and try and look, and then I make the generative AI challenge my hypothesis and be like, am I wanting it? Am I wanting to find something that isn't truly there? And is there actually is the data able to be spun out a different way? Have we got the onboarding wrong? Have we got the features wrong? Have we got an expectation gap? Things like that. So it's very much simpler.
There's actually a name for that strategy, and I'm happy you worded it that way. It's something that we call LLM as a judge, and it's actually a strategy that you can implement as code to challenge some of the assumptions that you have and basically act on it instead of, again, just putting everything just as is. Nice.
One of the things that Vadim mentioned was, when you use these tools that supposedly make your life easier by synthesizing large amounts of data, etc., you end up looking at a dashboard and you're seeing these are the trends and these are the insights. And one of my worries with those is the confidence that you ultimately have in what you are taking forward. Can I just look at these few bullet points and say, that's what I was supposed to learn from this? And the first time you realize you've used AI to summarize customer feedback and you've missed the most important part, you stress about this forever going forward. And one of the things I think I've always tried to do with customer research is wait until I'm not learning anything anymore. So keep talking to customers until I'm hearing exactly the same feedback. Everyone is telling me the same 3 to 5 or 7, 10 points. That's when I start knowing that I've wrapped my arms around everything that they're wanting. And you have to trust. If you're just looking at the dashboard, at the bullet points, you have to find a way of getting confident that these are indeed all of the things that my customers were trying to tell me. I think the second thing that creates let's call it a trust gap here, is these models are trained on huge amounts of data from across the internet. And when you get these answers back, it looks really impressive. It's I wouldn't have thought of that many points, so this must be good stuff. I think part of the problem is the information that they're trained on is just the publicly available information. I think the very best customer data is sitting on servers owned by your bank or owned by Reddit or owned by some other big company that is not willing to give that over to OpenAI to train the model. And so until you have access to, the JP Morgan GPT, you might not have all the answers out there or the best answers out there or access to the best customer insights by using one of these models. And so with that in mind, that you're going to need to do things the manual way and just keep speaking to customers, of course, trying to rely on these tools as much as possible to make that process easier, whether it's summarizing, synthesizing, extracting themes, possibly even scheduling things and just doing the desktop research on the internet and finding out, the competitors in the space, etc. But until I'm confident that the answers I'm getting from these publicly available models are inclusive of the very best and most accurate customer insights, I'll always keep doing the parts of the manual work that I know get me to the right answer.
Good points. All right, so because I knew our time will keep going, we're on schedule. So we'll get to our last insight discussion before we go into some Q&A. So this is good to see that product teams, product and customer success teams are aligned on user goals and the need for this cross-team collaboration. So despite that they recognize this value, there's some roadblocks that still remain establishing during the collaborativeness between the departments. So as we all know that these areas could always be improved. But according to the survey results, only about half of the teams feel confident in aligning with product requirements, and even few have effectively implemented onboarding practices that product and customer success teams agree are critical to retention. So Barbara, you mentioned a few things before about the importance of onboarding and identifying what are the issues. I have two questions here, but you feel free to take which one you want first. What are the main challenges you see in maintaining this alignment between these two teams? And then the second one, a little bit more detailed on the retention is a key metric for SaaS companies. So what are teams not doing to better align on fixing, say, a leaky bucket, or just, that's always a metric that's as retention we want to keep healthy?
Perfect. With the first question, the main challenges, all companies have the exact same main challenges, and it doesn't matter whether it's product teams and customer success or the reality is all organizations are internal perspective, that we understand what the problem is we're trying to solve to the world and how we're going to solve that, and we have roadmaps. It's very, very hard to be external perspective, meaning really customer first or buyer first. So all organizations fall into the trap of that. All human beings fall into the trap of that. So that's the reality. We always have to be checking ourselves, very much double checking. Are we being internal perspective or external perspective? Are we adding features because it's in our roadmap or because we think it's better versus our competitor? Or is it addressing an unmet need or a need of customers? With that in mind, between customer success teams and product teams, it's really simple and it's always happening. The reality is there's three big challenges. One is they have completely different priorities. The product team are very much focused on improving and adding features and developing and working to a roadmap. Customer success teams, they're focused on prioritizing and understanding the customer's needs from the minute they basically sign the contract to re-signing. So there's a difference in a misalignment. Now, they are actually supposed to work together, but the speed to which we have to work in businesses mean that if we don't have really good teams who are cross-communicating, have joined understanding of why things are on the roadmap and do they really meet the customer needs, and both are listening to each other, you're going to have a lot of issues. So yes, there's always different priorities, but communication barriers have to be broken down. That's the reality. We have to make sure that customer success teams can provide and are providing really timely feedback that successfully helps us understand how the product should evolve, and we are able to iterate and evolve our roadmap, not be so focused. The other piece, which is really hard, I wish I could say this is easy, and it's the siloed data. Often a lot of the really valuable insights from customer interactions and product use data, it's not shared between the teams. They're sat in completely different, isolated places, where generative AI isn't going to help with that. But predictive AI is really, I think, going to be the future of how to break down those silos in the data and provide both teams with a really fast, clear understanding of needs and understanding what is causing within the product or service or solution, what's actually causing the churn. So I'll stop there just in case, and then I'll come back to the other question, but just in case Vadim or Nasi want to add anything to that.
Yeah, you spoke about some very important things, and I think the key issue is communication between product teams and customer success. I think they should work a lot more closely together. the product teams that we know of and typically put together these days are product managers, product designers, and software developers or tech leads. And customer success should be part of that, because this traditional product team is speaking to customers upfront, trying to figure out what kind of products we need to create. They are working together to create these products. And it feels like only once we have something in mind, we then bring customer success in. And then in a way, it's customer success's job to take over onboarding and to then speak to customers later on in the journey when something is wrong, when they need help, or when they're trying to make their mind up about whether to retain or not. And to the customer, we're all just one big team, and you can clearly see that there's some separation. The product team almost moves on at some point and is more looking at analytics and actual product usage than digging into conversations that were going on with customer success yesterday. And at some point, the product team will say, well, I need to get in front of my customers a bit more, not really keeping in mind that customer success is doing that every hour, all day, every day. And so those two teams are in a way working on the same thing, but separately. And they would be more effective if they came together, and if that team was perhaps 4 strong instead of 3, and then sort of +1.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And then on the other question, the retention, the reality is with product teams, customer success teams, marketing teams, sales teams, everybody, we aren't using the same metrics, and we get into very granular metrics where the reality of a lot of customer experience, a lot of journeys, actually the churn begins onboarding. The sales and marketing promised something. The customer success and the product team understand the friction between what was sold and what is really able to be delivered. So we start the churn in onboarding, and that's, the way to fail. That's the fastest way to failure. So I think things like key metrics of the actual time to value, or the usability of the actual full product, or the time to adoption, things like this should be used and managed across the whole organization. And it's not the product team, it's not the customer success. It should be understanding, based on our business objectives, based on our solution, product or service, what are the key metrics that we should be tracking as a whole piece to understand usage and value for the customer. The onboarding process, it takes the whole organization to get the onboarding process correct. And the reality is, if you do real correct current and future state journey maps, you'll always find the biggest flaws in onboarding. People buy new technology or tools or whatever it is, and they expect to use it the exact same way as they bought something else, even though they didn't like that and they're upgrading or trying something new. We have this certain behavior and we expect things to go a certain way. So there's a lot of opportunity to use generative AI and predictive AI in the onboarding process to really, and this is where it takes the whole team to come together and say, what is working? Where are the stereotypes? Where are the expectation gaps? And how could we create personalized experience at scale in a self-serving way? What ways does this work best? And then when you're testing it, get the feedback. Don't do surveys, go and actually speak to people. There, as Nasi said, there is more value in speaking to a human being and really watching their body language, listening to the words they've chosen, bad or good feedback. That's going to tell you so much more than a survey sent to 1,000 people. When you watch someone wriggle to answer a question or say what they really like about your product, it's going to tell you. So that would be, to summarize for retention, align on the right metrics. There are hundreds of metrics and KPIs. It's very easy nowadays to pick the right ones, and really understand what the onboarding process is, and understand what someone actually thought they were buying and what your product delivers and doesn't deliver, and how you're going to collect feedback to check that you're living up to what you've sold in. Does that help?
Yes, I actually have a follow-up question maybe for both of you on, so when you're speaking to these customers, and we have seen in the data that the people that we've surveyed, they are doing user interviews, they're doing in-app messaging to keep a pulse on their customers when they're releasing new features, etc. And you guys hit on the key thing about the teams need to speak to each other, and not just these two teams, but like the whole organization. So when you have these really good one-on-one conversations, or you have an in-app survey that is testing a new feature that you're going to possibly bring to the market, how could teams better streamline this feedback? Because we cannot sit on calls all day relating information. And then this is where I think at some points, yes, we're going to talk about these high issues, or we get on a call and we have a bi-weekly meeting, but every day we're constantly getting feedback from our users and speaking to them, whether it's on the marketing side or product team or customer success, how we could streamline that feedback. And of course, there are tools like User-Snap and others that are allowing you to organize better. So again, what do we think about how teams should better communicate and how AI could help them, or just digitalizing that could get us up a line and better up to speed quicker?
From my point of view, it's very much the role and the responsibility of the lead customer success person is very much to get the insight of what is being said, what are the users and customers and buyers actually, what's the experience they're having at rapid pace. So it could be that they provide a one-page summary email every single Friday or every single Thursday if a Friday is not as productive. And it's here is the insights in the summary. And you can use things like User-Snap, you can use generative AI, whatever it is, to summarize, here are the best and the worst. This is what we have discovered this week. And a summary of, is it changing across the quarter or across a month? Are the issues changing? Or are they the same issues? Because if there's the same issues, then we need to address it pretty fast to work with the product teams or work with marketing or work with whomever the issue relates to. How are we going to resolve this? Where I think you can put a lot of information in and get this summary. It's a one-page summary, what you need to do, who needs to do it, and what's the next steps, really. If we go from a complete basics, that's what I would implement instantly.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, I think products can be extremely helpful in this regard. Many people in the organization are interfacing with customers one way or the other, and could have a useful piece of feedback that that someone else needs, right? But it's not their job, and so they perhaps don't bother to figure out who they should send this over to. So if there's a tool that they could just dump this information into, have the tool do some helpful processing of this, then there is in fact a useful role for the dashboard, because there are other people then in the organization that just want the bullet point. They want to check in on a specific product or feature and say, what feature do we do next? What article do we write next? What webinar topic do we work on next? And they don't care to review the entire transcript of 6 different calls. They want someone or something to summarize that, and AI can be very helpful there.
Yeah. Great. All right, so let's move on then and answer a few questions here. I think based on what I'm reading from the chats, we have addressed most of these already, so it's just a little bit more if you want to add anything else. So the first one is, what can be done to improve AI's accuracy and trustworthiness in the decision-making process? So this gears back to what we're saying, what you put in is what you put out, and then also having a strategic mindset to be able to challenge, understand what is wrong, what is right, what you need more information. So the trust, how maybe then we could talk about the trustworthiness. So if you are putting in really good information and you felt like you did a well job of giving the AI the details that is needed from the data, should you trust that or are we still not? You shouldn't trust it fully. Like, what have you any personal experiences you want to share, like how you do your workflows?
I would like to kind of point out maybe 3 or 4 things here. First of all, think of it, is it enough information for me as a person to extract that insight from that particular information? And then you can do it at scale. If it's not enough information from you, this is not a magic machine. It will not be better than what you what it can extract from that information. That's the first one. Secondly, make sure you divide your problem into small bits and pieces that can be very clear and can provide a very clear answer to. So don't make it too ambiguous. Don't kind of expect that from 2 or 3 lines of a piece of feedback that you've received from your customer, the language model will automatically know everything about your business, everything around your context. It will know the economic context of where your business activates. It doesn't work like that. So make sure that there's enough information and that you ask clear, concise questions that can be solved with that information. Third point is going back to how language models work in general as an architecture. They simply do next word prediction. So don't rely on it having any type of factual information. There isn't any place in a language model where it has like a small piece of memory that it can extract what has Steve Jobs said about a certain thing. It just has been trained on a large corpus of data. So it statistically knows that after you've written like 5 or 6 words, the next words are those that it will generate. So don't expect it to be truthful information. Always fact check what it gives you, and make sure that you ask like specific questions instead of very ambiguous questions. And if you ask like ambiguous questions and you want a more creative answer, just take that for what it's worth. It's just a creativity output that you have to review and to closely monitor and make sure that you just double check that before taking an action on.
Yeah, I would agree with Vadim. Generative AI, remember, it scrapes the internet. We have biases. The internet is not truthful. You know, that's the reality. So be very careful what you're asking and what task you want it to do, because it will screw you. And there's been many a times I've given a very clear request and what's come back, I'm like, that is absolute nonsense. I don't know where that came from. And I will ask it 3 more times. It doesn't do it. And I'm like, right, that's not the task for it. I'm moving on. Predictive AI is, you know, a lot more advanced, but again, it will try and find correlations where sometimes there isn't correlation. So it's very much with predictive AI, you've got to use common sense as well. And you've got to, you know, what I loved earlier, Nasi saying, that as much as you look at quantitative, qualitative is always, when it comes to, you know, product, when it comes to customer, we need to know and we need to spend as much time as possible spending time with customers or potential buyers to gain the truth. You know, the internet is never going to tell you that. So generative AI is going to help you with hypothesis, but it can't tell you really what your customer really, really needs. Use AI as much as you can to free up time on tasks that are basic and menial and consuming time, that will give you time back to go and speak to customers or go and walk in their shoes or go and do the job to be done that is their world. And that will give you so much more value than anything. And also, you're not going to lose your job that way, because you're going to be more powerful and more knowledgeable about who your customer and buyer are.
I think it's really good that you highlighted that, okay, if it's not working, then that's not the task for it. And I think that's key to know. Maybe it doesn't matter how much times you rewrite it. At some point, you just say, okay, this is not for it, and you move on. And that's a good advice and a good way to change the workflow. All right, so we'll move on to another one here. We'll do 2 more. How would you suggest product managers go about building new features that incorporate AI capabilities? So maybe, I mean, I think Vadim, you also kind of showed a bit about how the models are structured, but say you're new on it, say a company's new and they want to explore like what areas should we work, how they should go about it to start this AI process?
That's a very good question. And I'm thinking a bit about how we've done it internally. And we always start with these, a product discovery workshops where we try to understand what, again, going back to what we've discussed already, what challenge are we trying to solve? This is a tool and we should apply it precisely where it should be applied. So we're always going back to the base principles and figuring out, okay, what does our user base, what do they want? What are their challenges? What are we trying to solve? Then finding the best user experience for that, validating it with users then. So getting into those calls, presenting it to a client, showing it to them, and asking them what they think about it. Would it make their lives easier? Would it be maybe perhaps too complex for them? They're okay with what they have in terms of analytics. As Nasi said, maybe they want to have all of the detail. They don't need a summary. They need everything. They want to have simply a list of looking through all of the feedbacks. Okay, it's 1,000 pieces of feedbacks, but maybe they need simply a classification to look through them instead of just summaries and bullet points. So discovering the need and then validating that need prior to jumping on building it into the product, that has been very beneficial to us. And I must say, I think from a few brands that we're constantly working with within SaaS Group, we've maybe prototyped like 10 different directions, and we've settled on a couple. And that's not because we kind of didn't find a solution or AI was the limitation. It was nothing around that. It was just simply because the customer base didn't find value in it, and we just didn't build it. It's not a limitation of the technology. It's rather not applying it where it has to be applied. So I think Barbara and Nasi kind of touched on that better than me, and validating and asking and talking with your customers prior to jumping on the hype train and saying, okay, now it's powered by AI just because we have a language model that creates a summary of the outcome.
Yeah, the hype train is problematic, I think, today. Too many companies are asking the question, how can we integrate AI into our product or experience? Because they think they have to, because it's cool. And not enough going back to the problem that they're trying to solve for their customers. The AI is an enabling technology. And if we think back to when the smartphone came out, it wasn't what app can we build, but it was how could building a mobile app help us serve our customers better than we are today? And if you had a valid answer to that question, then you go and build a mobile app. But you don't just do one because everyone else is doing one. And we're for sure seeing that in AI today. So remain anchored in the core insight, the core problem that you're trying to solve, and think about how this could help you do that better, make it more efficient, make the customers happier.
And maybe one of the largest real-world AI systems out there. So we're interacting with them on a daily basis. All of the recommendation engines of the likes of YouTube, Netflix, Instagram, whichever media platform you consume content from. They didn't think of, okay, what AI features would our customers love? They just thought, how can we serve better content to our customers so that they spend more time, they enjoy more using our platform, they find what their interest is much quicker. So they distilled it to the problem and then found out that AI is the best solution to that, because it's very hard to do it in a procedural way. And I believe that's the right approach to it.
Great, really, really good insight. I think I'm going to actually clip out this section and do it as a post to share with the audience after. But my last thing, which is just fun, and if you don't have one off the top of your head, feel free to say pass. But I feel like I'm always looking for new tools. Do you have any what are the favorite tool you're using right now? Is there something you've heard about that you want to try? Whether it is in something new around generative AI, if it's something that's in predictive analysis that you're like, that could be something in the future. And if you don't have an answer now, maybe you could come back to me after, and then I could share it in our recording email. But yeah, if you have any, whoever wants to go, otherwise pass.
I don't have a specific tool, but what I'm about to play with over the next few weeks is really stress testing value propositions. That's and I'm just going to use the very basic but locked generative AI tool to very much try and double check, are the value propositions truly value based propositions on unmet or understood customer needs. So it will be, you know, a lot of times me screaming at the computer to double check if it's right, or rewording it to double check. But that's, I think, I read a stat that only 3% of value propositions are of any value. So that's what I want to do. So I shall come back and say
Okay.
what I did.
Good.
But that's what I want to do at the moment.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for sharing that. I'll follow up with you and see how it goes.
I think the one for me, just personally, is, you know, it's becoming popular to create the second brain where you've recorded all the interesting stuff that you're reading and hearing out there, and you've got it neatly organized in Notion or something similar. And I want that, but I just don't want to do the work. And you know, doing the audio book while washing the kids, and the podcast in the car, and reading the book when I actually have time, articles, etc. And I wish an AI could just be there on my shoulder and grab all the things that I really enjoy, and, you know, organize it neatly for me so that I don't forget it, and it replays it to me so I keep it top of mind. It probably exists. It could. I should find it, but I would.
You need to
I'll
check
like
out rewind.ai.
Okay.
Basically does that. It records everything that you see on your screen, granted not in real life, although they actually have built this other part of their company where they have a device that you wear with you, and it records also what you say. But mainly it started as a piece of software that you have on your computer, and it records and classifies everything. So you can search for this webinar and say, okay, what did I say about, I don't know, customer research? And then it will bring you back to what you said. It's really cool. Just for the sake of not dirty, just check it out and see what
scary,
you think about it.
Exciting.
Yeah, it's, to be honest, it is scary once you start it. I've used it for a few months just to see how it would impact my work, and it feels like you have this extended memory that you can just access. It's interesting in a way. For me, I use Claude on a daily basis now. It's Anthropic's ChatGPT alternative. But I believe that it's better because it has a bunch of features on actually showing you dashboards and analysis and so on. So you can really prototype quickly stuff with it. You could just put in some data that you have and kind of perform some analysis on it really quickly. It's nothing very, very advanced, but it's very good to prototype an idea, to extract a bit of information. And it's also very good with building software. So from a software engineer's perspective, it works really well.
Okay, great. This was lovely. So you guys did give us some good tools. We're both all going to try.